Are you loving the First Class Live show? Then join our private Patreon community. Not only will you help to support our ability to provide you with great content, but you can also get exclusive perks like bonus videos and resources, discounts, episode transcripts, and more. So what are you waiting for? Join today at patreon.com/First Class Life. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/First Class Life.
I agree. So earlier we talked about good and bad therapists for you, right? I won't say it was a horrible experience, but my recent therapist, since I've relocated, we talked a lot about career transition because that's where I'm at. Of course, we're always teetering on the line if you should drop everything and become a full-time entrepreneur, or you should just transition in your career to get that new feeling of livelihood. And so I was working with them, and they mentioned that your feelings can inform your actions. And I thought that was the best thing they ever said. So it's not so much that you go with the flow of your feelings all the time, because sometimes you need to take a pause. Do not do not pop off on somebody because they were wrong. They were wrong. But sometimes the absolute best way to react is to ignore them.
You're listening to the First Class Life show hosted by Lindsey Vertner, a holistic personal development show for high-achieving leaders who desire to maximize their impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. So grab a drink, grab your notebook, and let's get started. Hey, welcome to another episode of the First Class Life podcast, your personal development show, because you are a high-achieving leader desiring to maximize your impact while you create a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. I'm super excited for you today because today's guest is a good friend of mine, and you are going to adore her. I know her story is phenomenal. I had the opportunity to meet her some years ago at an event, and we have been friends ever since. And listen, I'm not going to bore you with all those details. We're going to hop right in the conversation. Okay, so welcome your First Class Life guest for today's episode, Miss Shavonne Holton. Hey, girl. Good. Welcome to the First Class Life studios. And listen, y'all, for those that are viewing the video, she is giving us 1950s black and white vintage vibes, okay? Don't she look fly and fabulous?
Thank you. I didn't intentionally plan on doing that, but it just so happened to happen.
If you are ever to browse through her social media, she has these gorgeous photos where it just looks so vintage, and she has on her red lipstick and her curls. Oh my goodness. That is what this video is giving me right now.
Actually, that particular shoot was inspired by Maya Angelou. So you know how there's photos of her taking photos in a hotel room to show her writing process. That whole shoot was inspired by her.
Sweet. Y'all have to make sure y'all just search all up in her stuff. So hopefully you can see and experience the beauty in those photos, okay? So welcome. I know how amazing you are, but I need you to tell the folks out there listening, who is Shavonne really? Who are you, girl? Give us the tea. Tell us a little about her.
It's so weird trying to say something, so I'll just go off of what people have told me. I am an unofficial life coach, but in reality, I do work in academia, advising kiddos. So I guess that transfers over. I also am an optimist. I don't believe in sitting in sorrow. I'm always having a can-do attitude about things. And I guess, I just just live by the motto or the question, why not? That would probably best describe who I am. Is if whether it's a good question like why don't you take it to the next level, or if it's why did you make that choice? I'm like, well, why not? You know, that's probably the best way to describe myself.
What was your first experience with asking yourself that question? Why not?
Right. So I believe where I became aware of it would be in therapy. I was going through a series of things. It was kind of like a Job experience where I lost my relationships, I lost family members, I lost pretty much everything. And my therapist, I think she meant to ask me why not about certain choices that I brought to the sessions. More so like, why do you feel like examining? Why do I feel like I had certain limitations? But then I was like, you know what? Why not launch a book? Why not launch a podcast? Why not? It just went more of I answered it more in our artistic expression type of way. So that's why I became aware of it. But as I talk about it, the why not was probably nurtured as a kid, right? My best friend and I, we recently talked about dissociation and how you kind of like learn to cope with how things are going because everything else is in the hole. And so the why not for me was explored in nature. And so I'm really a nature lover, and that's where I find my healing a lot of times.
Why not was explored through nature.
Yeah.
Now, I am not a nature person. Like, I don't mind being outdoors, but I don't like the bugs. I'm not one for hiking or things like that. I do like adventures, but other than that, and I do like the pool and the beach and that type of stuff. But otherwise, I'm like, take me inside, please.
Okay, well, don't accept the invitation to come hang out then out here. No, we'll go to the beach.
Yes, that one I can do. We can definitely hang out by water. So, in some of those things, because you mentioned therapy, and I think that is something beneficial for everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what level you're at, is just, having that opportunity to have that unbiased opinion. Now, I do want to preface what I'm about to say with every therapist is not made equal, and it might take some time for you to find your fit with a specific therapist. So if you've ever had a bad experience with therapy, please give it another try, okay? Some people need a little more therapy than others, but it's definitely beneficial no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter where you're going. So in your decision to begin therapy, what did that look like? Were you nervous? Because I know in the Black community specifically, therapy is such a taboo thing. Like, it's becoming more dominant in today's world, but still it is very hush hush. Like, you keep your problems at home and to yourself, and you don't need no shrink and stuff like that. So what was that journey like in your decision to pursue therapy?
So like you mentioned kind of in your disclaimer, I swore off of therapy when I was like in middle school and was going through some things, and my mom took me to therapy. It often felt like the therapist, it just wasn't effective for me. It felt like in some ways I was helping them with how they projected during the sessions. And so I really swore it off in like middle school. But this particular instance or this season that I was talking about, I was in my 30s, early 30s. And it was actually the kind of like the jumping off point of that series of the events that happened in that Job season. So right before my husband was like, yo, I don't want to be married anymore. And that broke my heart. And so around that time, we were trying to figure things out because we had hit a rough patch and we had both scheduled this appointment together. And so the appointment was scheduled, but then by the time that appointment actually occurred, the first consultation, the first meeting, he was like, deuces. And so I pretty much came crawling to there because I was just like, if for no other reason, I need to show up because this is some wild thing that's happening right now. And so, luckily, we talked before the show about how you know who you can trust and have transparent and vulnerable conversations with because they can hold space for you. And I felt that from this person, and I was stuck with them or joined at these sessions at the hip for 4 years. Just coming out of that.
For 4 years.
Yeah.
That is a feat because some people, they'll go to one session and they'll be like, this ain't for me. So what were some of those things that made you feel comfortable enough in sticking with this therapist and understanding that, all right, I can be safe here. I trust this person.
I think it started with picking the location. So back in Indianapolis, I've moved since to Southern California, but back in Indianapolis, there's this place called the Christian Theological Seminary, and I'm a woman of faith. I'm not held tight to faith where I live by rules, but the place spoke volumes first, and then they also had like a sliding scale for your income based off of your income, how much the sessions would be. So I think that was like kind of like rolling out the red carpet to the experience. But then with this particular person, we had nothing in common, and I'll flat out say that. Like, she's a white woman, petite, like just everything that I'm not. So what I guess brought some ease was that it was partly the crossroads in life. So you come to a point sometimes where you feel like you can't hold it together anymore. It was like the opportunity of it. And then also during my first session with her, I told her, I was like, I love God, but I'm going to cuss.
Okay, that part. He knows my heart.
He knows my heart. He knows it's broken. So, yeah. So a lot of our work together over that time was processing those existential questions that come up from the ending of a relationship you thought would last forever. So, the broken promises of it all. And for me, I hid, going back to that dissociation piece, I hid behind the marriage the other things that were going on around me. So my issues with my dad, my issues with my mom, my issues just in life and just living a facade. And so I feel like because she was accepting of, from that first session, like, look, we're in a Christian setting, but you can cuss, I was all for it.
Yeah. Really connecting and allowing you to be your authentic self. I think that makes a big difference because, especially as leaders in this world, we can often put on these masks so that we're living up to the expectations of other people, our parents, our significant others, our coworkers, or our clients, or our friends, our family, all these different expectations of other people. And over time, that gets exhausting. And you can burn out from doing that. You get home, you're taking off these masks, feeling like, okay, I haven't really been my authentic self. And eventually you can lose yourself in that process because you've done it for so long. And so I think that's very important that leaders are able to show up authentically and thrive in their skills, being their authentic self. So with that said, because you talk about dissociation and living under that facade, what is your first memory of feeling like you were living up to the expectations of someone else, or you were playing kind of this role or this character that wasn't really who you were inside?
I will start by saying that I've always pursued excellence even before I understood what that meant. However, pursuing excellence became a coping mechanism because when I was coming up, I had shows like, and I hate to say this because of the things that have unfolded, but like I had shows like The Cosby Show, which inspired me to take that route of maybe wanting to be a doctor, or just like it was like the Black excellence reflected on TV that really made me aspire to certain things. And I focused so much on that, even while as a child, things at home did not nurture that aspiration, right? So it was like me pursuing excellence was a way of escaping some of the harder things that I saw throughout my life. Part of that was that, and it wasn't always horrible. That's what I'm learning to accept now. It wasn't always horrible, but I am the child of a single parent who was or is battling addiction. And as a child who wants something more, and you see like your friends, maybe you all went to the same public school, but some people have more updated clothing than you, or you have relatives that have what seems to be stable and you crave that, but that's not your reality. So for me, it was always a pursuit of how do I position myself, even before I had that language, how do I position myself so that if I do start a family, if I make it out of this thing, then it'll be more stable. And so I by that point, it was, I forgot the term for it, but it was definitely working for approval for a long time. So it took that breaking period to really face myself, as you mentioned, like to really face myself and learn how to be comfortable with both the good and the bad of my identity. Like in yoga, I've since become a yoga teacher. And so, you know, you learn how to hold space for both the pleasant and not so pleasant aspects of who you are.
You learn how to hold space at both the pleasant and not so pleasant of who you are. I love that. I love that. And so in thinking about that, what would you say is like a significant moment? Excuse me, I can't talk at the moment. What is a significant moment in your life where you were like, I don't like this person that I am portraying to be, or this person that I have become, or anything along those lines?
I think that started to happen probably months before, if not a year or so before that moment with my marriage, because I noticed who I was becoming in trying to maintain this happy image. And so I started to have these clues. You know, Oprah always talks about, you know, follow the clues or else it'll become like a boulder. The little pebbles, you started to notice them. And so for me, it was like, how am I treating other women? Because I was becoming a nasty person. Not necessarily to women I knew, but it was just, when I look back, I'm like, I don't like that girl. Like, I don't like who I was in those moments. In all, much like the reality shows, nothing against them because I love the people outside of it, but I was acting that catty in ways, right? So that was one. I was like, you don't need to be acting like Nene. Just, I'm just kidding. I love Nene though, but so I was acting like that, and then other clues were just, you know, you feel it in your body when you are like bending over backwards for someone and you're not doing it from a full place. Like I can say that now, but I didn't have the language for it then. So again, hindsight is 2020. It's like it's a difference between compromising in a self-sabotaging way versus coming to someone and saying, this is what I have to offer. Those are different things. And so I was bending over backwards. And then also I just felt a lot of this, I felt inside too. Like I was just running away from facing some of those childhood wounds. And it was showing up in my adulthood because, you know, by this point, I was starting to do that transition where as adults, you kind of like start to shift roles with your parents and start to ease into that. Sometimes it's abrupt, but you ease into becoming more of a caregiver. And so my mom had some health issues and they were serious ones. And I wasn't there. It was just like, that's outside of me. I'm in this marriage. I'm doing what's best for here. Wearing myself out because I was commuting to work an hour one way. So all in all, like 3 hours a day. And it was starting to come to a head. And right. So imagine your drive when you used to come to the Indy, like just doing it. It wore out my spirit. It wore out my mind, my body. Like, it took a toll. And so, I can look back and say I'm thankful for that time period, because it really allowed me to like accept who I am and my limitations in this moment. But I don't wish that series of events on anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did that journey look like once you recognized who you had become? What were those first steps that you took to kind of reinvent your identity or regain your identity?
So what I will say is that things got worse before they got better. Because it happens, people think like there's this jump off point where, okay, I have this realization and now everything is going to get better. No, it got worse. Because I told my therapist, like, it felt as if that time period, like someone was making an open grave. Like, it literally felt like I was, in a way, it was the old self was dying while the new self was reemerging. And so, like the day before the divorce was finalized, I lost 2 uncles. One, I was about to drive my mom to go see, but we didn't make it. The other, we pulled up to the house before the coroner did and didn't know what was happening. And so I saw like some very vivid things that like broke my spirit. So then the divorce was finalized. Within 2 weeks after that, my mother had a health scare because she caught pneumonia after like an open surgery in her chest. She has lymphoma. And so there was a moment while we were in the hospital where she looked like she was going to take her last breath. And so like all of those events within like 2 to 3 weeks, like nearly took me out. And so going back to my little therapist, I came to the session. It was just after I had many sessions in those 3 weeks, but the session after that, I was just numb. And I was like, I feel like a shell and I'm just walking around. And so she asked me a life-changing question. And up until this point, I had been doing CrossFit for about 3 years on and off. And I wasn't really serious about it. And she knew that. And she said, or she asked, what would your CrossFit coach say when you're lifting something heavy? And I'm like in the middle of tears, like my mom was only, just pouring my whole heart out. And I said, well, they would say to pick up the heavier weights pick up the lighter weights as if you're lifting the heavier weight. So, using the same effort, building upon the basics in order to lift what is heavier, what seems unmanageable. And so up to this point, I had started reading the Bible every day. I was journaling. I was changing who I was listening to and all of that. And I think I came off of my practice that month where all those events happened. And so when she asked this question, what would your coach say when you're lifting heavy weight? And in my mind, I was thinking, get back to the basics. And so the basics for me up until this point was getting back into the Word, listening to like Les Brown and Lindsey. I'm just kidding. We hadn't known each other yet.
Ow.
But, just having that daily practice. And so I think that was a turning point, was just realizing you need some kind of daily self-cheerleading sessions to make sure that you're good for the day. And as you're good for each day, you then grow and do more positive things.
Getting back to the basics.
Literally.
That's important. That is really important. I think sometimes we overcomplicate things because we feel like if it's not complicated, then it's not really working. And I know I've said before, like sometimes we dismiss something simply because it's easy or because it's simple. And so we overthink it and we're like, well, that can't be right. I know how to do that. That's really easy. That's really simple. That doesn't take much effort. And so we dismiss it because we feel like it should be harder than that. Subconsciously is what happens. And so I love that you brought that up, getting back to the basics. Now, we do know that it is easier said than done. So what would you say your process was like in doing just that and getting back to the basics?
Yeah. So I reintroduced the daily prayer and devotionals and all of that. And I began to find writing as cathartic. And it was helping me to answer, along with therapy, along with going back to the gym. I was starting to write, and I decided to write a book. And I started writing this book in 2016. And that began to, it was a cleansing process. I mean, it's very cathartic. And so it allowed me to release a lot that I was holding on to that I hadn't dealt with for 30 plus years. Again, because, you know, those existential crises make you look back. And so in the process of writing, I evaluated how I wanted to publish my story and if I really was going to ever publish it, because it was like, this is 300 pages of this is 300 pages of my story, and it's very vulnerable, testing this new identity, right, as someone who's more vulnerable. I was like, I'm just gonna delete this whole file. Like, literally, I did not ever plan to publish. And so when I finally decided, I started my publishing company, VK Press. It's named in honor of my grandmother, who was my nurturer, and my mother, who taught me how to delegate, like, and collaborate with people. Like, my mom knows no stranger. And so my grandmother's dream of publishing her story and her nurture of me, plus my mom's, she instilled me with collaboration. I started VK Press. And so I published my story, thought, okay, that's it. Not doing anything else. So that's early 2017 by now. And I did these series of events because my background is in theater. And I decided to do like this event called Wine and Unmasking the Strong Black Woman, because that's one of the themes in my book. And so I'm doing all these events to kind of like promote, but really just have fun and explore this new identity. And someone approached me in August of 2017 and said, hey, could you publish my book? And I was like, I ain't no publisher. Like, I'm like, this ain't me. And so I said yes. And then a couple months after, my grandmother passed. And I was just like, holy crap. You know, this woman, she was a biracial girl in Indianapolis, experienced gentrification at its finest, especially in the Crispus Attucks area, had 9 children, talked about writing all these books about that whole experience, being biracial, gentrification, public housing, assistance, and all of that. Never wrote anything on a piece of paper. And so after she passed, I was like, I need to help others tell their story. And I hate to sound morbid, but before they die, like, yeah, period. And so that spun off, honestly, I think the positive changes that happened. But it took maybe 2 years of healing, like really allowing the old identity to pass, allowing myself to become vulnerable to this new identity, and then finding purpose in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
Couldn't have made it up.
And I think that's how it happens a lot, finding your purpose in unexpected ways. You know, it's a fine line. It's like a dance you got to play, because on the one end, you want to make sure that you aren't living up to the expectations of other people, like we mentioned earlier. But on the other end, it's like your purpose can often find you through other people, especially when we're unsure what that purpose is. And so what would you say is a piece of advice in identifying which is which?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
So what advice would you give in identifying whenever other people are helping you to discover your purpose versus you living up to the expectations of other people that aren't really who you are, what you're meant to do?
I think you touched on it. It's a fine line in navigating that, right? So I think it takes a level of awareness, self-awareness. I think some people can cultivate that, like they're natural at being aware of how they feel. Like I honestly always admire people who can quickly express how they feel in the moment. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, girl, I feel that, you know? But for others, it takes a while to build that awareness. And so for me, it took a lot of breaking. It probably was always there, but it was definitely clear by this point. And so what I can say to that is that I knew things were aligned with my purpose when I felt full in a way. I felt like I could partner with the people, and I felt like the experience would not deplete me. And a lot of times now we talk about red flags. When I wasn't operating in my purpose, I was connecting with people who had red flags. They had a track record of ghosting, or they had a track record where their credibility was shot. Like, how are you going to tell me to make a certain business decision, and you've been at your 9 to 5, never taking a chance on yourself? I mean, there's still value in a 9 to 5. I still got a 9 to 5. Like, check the source, And that's the thing. I think that's the key. Being aware and check the source. So for instance, that first author, I trusted her because I was a fan first. She moved me because she spoke to my experience in a poem, and she never even knew me. The first line of the poem was, "I learned how to pray from a drug addict." I'm like, how you?
You don't know my life.
So a year later, she's like, "Hey, can you post me?" "Yeah, I'm your fan." Like, there was a publishing project after that not many people know about, because the book was finished, but the person dropped off the face of the earth and started their own publishing company. And they had a history. Their track record was that they ghosted me in their friendship years before. And I ignored that and decided to partner with them. And so, by checking the track record and also noticing if you find any hesitation with you wanting to do the thing, if you find hesitation, that person, that connection, it doesn't align with your purpose.
And I think that's a big thing. We often go against that gut instinct. Sometimes our feelings can steer us in the wrong direction because feelings are not facts, but other times we do often ignore our gut. And I think that can be a guiding factor in making those right decisions, to not ignore the red flags. Wouldn't you say?
I agree. So earlier we talked about good and bad therapists for you, right? So I won't say it was a horrible experience, but my recent therapist, since I've relocated, we talked a lot about career transition, because that's where I'm at. Of course, we're always teetering on the line if you should drop everything and become a full-time entrepreneur, or you should just transition in your career to get that new feeling of livelihood. And so I was working with them, and they mentioned that your feelings can inform your actions. And I thought that was the best thing they ever said. So it's not so much that you go with the flow of your feelings all the time, because sometimes you need to take a pause. Do not do not pop off on somebody because they were wrong. They were wrong. But sometimes the absolute best way to react is to ignore them. That's my gift. But then your feelings can tell you okay, something about this isn't right, and maybe I shouldn't move forward with it. And so it informs your actions. It can inform your actions. Oh, okay, this is pleasant. I'm still skeptical for some reason, but I'm going to take my time with it. Or, oh no, this opportunity, I feel like faith is saying, let's go. The opportunity saying, let's go. My feeling, I'm going to go. So.
Yeah, it is definitely important to develop that skill as much as possible, because like you said earlier, being self-aware does not come naturally to many people, especially if you've experienced trauma experiences in your life, maybe to more degrees than other people. For the record, just because one person's trauma looks differently than another person's trauma does not dismiss or minimize either trauma either way. So let me make sure I say that. But really developing and honing in that self-aware skill is a phenomenal thing to do for everybody in life. You know, First Class Life is an acronym. For those that are new to the show, it's an acronym for the skills and characteristics that you want to embody into your life to create that life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. And the more characteristics that you have embodied, the higher quality you are creating for your life. And so reflective, the R in first stands for reflective, and that's all about being self-aware of yourself and being self-aware of your surroundings. It's like you said, oftentimes our feelings can inform. And an example that I use is like, have you ever walked into somewhere, it's a brand new place, you haven't heard anything about it, but you walk in and you feel uneasy and you aren't really sure why you feel uneasy, because again, you've never been there before, you haven't heard anything about it, but for some reason, like, it just don't sit right with you. And here's the thing, when you're self-aware, you can recognize that feeling and you can either, one, do things to change the environment, or you can remove yourself from the environment. But when you're not self-aware, you stay in that place and you continue to have these feelings, and it potentially can get worse. And then you're like, oh, I don't know why I'm feeling like this. And it starts to affect your behaviors. It starts to affect your thinking and things like that. And still, you are keeping yourself in that space of uneasiness, and it's not doing you any good. Do you want to be surrounded by other high-achieving women who are working on their goals just like you? Are you looking for your circle that's passionate about their own growth yet still wants to see you shine? Do you desire to be supported through collaborations and connections instead of competition? Then Cowork and Chill is your place to be. Cowork and Chill is a hybrid of virtual co-working and virtual networking. It's a community of women who are striving to build living legacies. This is the space to create meaningful relationships with other equally yoked women where you're being poured into just as much as you pour out. So if you're looking for your crew for supportive accountability, then sign up today at coworkandchill.com. That's COWORKANDCHILL. coworkandchill.com.
I love that you said that, because the first thing that came to mind to me was food. I've traveled abroad, and I can kid you not, I love this place, love it, love it, love it. But what guided my food choices was that intuitive knowing, right? And it's like, this don't smell right. And come to find out that ate there at those places where I was like, okay, I'm gonna find another option and try new foods. But at this place, they got sick. And so it was like, trust your picker. But that also brings up the awareness in food, period. Like, we need to be able to tap into knowing that, okay, if you feel uneasy about eating this fast food, like, sandwich, then it's probably not the thing you need to be eating. I know this took a mindfulness detour, but and so
it all fits.
Right? And like, dogs don't even eat everything. Babies don't eat everything. So like, I don't know, sometimes we just go through a process where we ignore our senses and try to go towards the thing that's not right for us. And and then get mad later, like, trust your knowing, your inner knowing, whether it's food or relationships or new projects, new jobs, anything.
Yeah, it's definitely a transferable skill across all areas, because you just said food, relationships, job. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I feel like you can agree that there's been some questionable decisions in relationships, right? Where we kind of ignored that sense, we ignored that feeling, and then we found ourselves in a situation and it's like, well, damn, damn, how did I get here? And it's like, oh, well, you ignored that sense that you had at the very beginning.
That's it. That's it. But I think that there too, like, some of those are become purposeful detours because you learn the lesson, unfortunately, the hard way. And then also just checking what that feeling means. So, like, are you afraid because this experience will put you in a space where you don't feel comfortable? Are you afraid that no one in your family has ever made this type of choice before? Is the uneasiness because you feel like you don't have what it takes to embark on this new journey? So a prime example of this would be, I was scared as all get out in going to China. I went to China for 2 weeks for my job. I still do. I work in higher ed. And so part of that particular assignment was to do orientations with the Chinese students' families before they came to China or Indiana, but to the university in the United States. And so days before, I was just like, I ain't got no money. Like, the whole trip was paid for, but I had to pay for my food and if I wanted to bring back any gifts. And so I don't think I could have. I could have said, no, I'm not going. No, I couldn't. I was scared. I was so scared. And at the last minute, like, 2 people gave me, like, where I went there was over $200. And $200 went a long way over there. But imagine the experience I would have missed out on, walking the Great Wall of China, eating duck, learning Mandarin, connecting with Chinese students, learning about masks, 3 years before we had to wear them every day, visiting universities. And actually that whole trip inspired me because I took that leap of faith to go out of the country where I pretty much didn't have to pay for much. I took a leap on myself and drove across country to where I am now in Southern California. But it took that trip in particular that gave me, like, the evidence that it's possible.
The evidence that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's so funny how one decision in one time of our lives influences another decision way in the future that we have no clue about and just how things play out. Because like you said, if you hadn't went on the China trip, then you maybe wouldn't have went across country on this road trip that you were just referencing. And so you said something about being comfortable and uncomfortable. What would you say is a key piece of advice to help someone that is okay being comfortable, but they're not really truly living out who they should be? Let me rephrase the question here because there's like, yes, it's there. And it's like, how do I word this in the best way? But like, just that advice to those out there that are in their comfort zone. What is that advice that you would give them about the importance of making themselves uncomfortable?
Probably the first thing that comes to mind, in all honesty, is your mentorship. Get around people, listen to people, fill yourself up. Going back to the basics, make part of your basics listening to people who took a chance on themselves. It doesn't have to be moving across country. It doesn't have to mean launching a podcast. It could just mean that, okay, I have several examples. One of them, one of the people I followed, and this was another faith thing. Right after I came back from China, I was in that process of rebuilding my mind and seeing myself in a growth mindset versus fixed. And I learned about the Great Girlfriends. And they are 2 phenomenal women who had a podcast based out of New York. One of the co-founders, Brandis Daniel, she went to a fashion show in New York and was like, we need to do this for multicultural designers. It was like during Fashion Week. Founded this thing called Harlem's Fashion Row. And so by the time I heard her, she was maybe into like year 7 or 8. And so I'm like listening to her all the time. I drove to New York from Indiana to meet her and her co-host, Sybil of Moody. But I just kept listening to her. And part of her story is that even when she almost gave up on Harlem Fashion Row, she got the big deal to partner with LeBron on a shoe that was co-designed by multicultural designers because she took a leap on herself. But listening to her story, listening to stories of like Steve Harvey, you know, him betting it all, living out of his car, having a weekend of events where he ended up being on the Apollo show. And then that, like Sinbad and them canceling, and then Steve Harvey becoming like the host of the Apollo. And now we see him hosting all the TV shows. He's become a motivational speaker. Like, I listen to those people on a regular basis. So, you know, part of getting out of your own head really is to surround yourself with folks who are where you want to be. And even Lindsey, your story, right? So we met, like as she said, in 2007. It was actually the day after my birthday. You didn't know. But we were both at this event. I was a vendor. She approached my table and we talked. Didn't think nothing of it. And here we are like 5 years later. But as I've learned of your own story, of how you took such a situation that could have broken anybody and just rebuilt your life. And I'm about to cry just thinking, I'm literally getting chills thinking about your story. Okay, so hold on. But just think that they can't come out of something. And you can be comfortable, you can be uncomfortable and not think that you can make it out, but you can. I want people to know that you can. Like, it just takes one girl, okay?
Listen, we keep it raw and real here on the show. Thank you for your vulnerability.
So the point is, you don't have to look far. Like, I looked at Steve Harvey, I looked at Brandon Daniels. I have like a plethora of playlists of folks that I may have never met in my life. But there's people in your circle who are taking those chances. So just surround yourself with those people so that you can make the life to live. You mentioned, I heard when you said live, I was like, that's it. If you want to live, you make new choices. You just exist. You stay where you at.
Ooh. That part, okay? If you want to live, you make new choices. If you want to exist, you stay where you're at. And I don't know about you, but I'm not down for just existing and going through the motions, okay? I want to live life to the fullest. But
first class seats, okay?
Yes, okay. Like, even if you've never ridden a plane, you know that there's a difference between first class and economy, right? And you know that everybody wants to be in first class. Why? Because the quality is better. You get better food. You get better service. You got more room. It's just nicer. Everybody's going to get from point A to point B, but would you rather arrive with the comforts of life versus like being next to the porta potty on the airplane, all scrunched up?
Right. There is a difference. I've heard speakers like Lovia Ajayi and them say like part of their your requirements change, because part of her requirement is that she flies first class, because once you get off that plane, if you're expected to speak right after that, you can't pour into people when you feel depleted, period. Mm-hmm. And so you choose to elevate your experience, not so much just for you, not just because you can say, oh, I laid back and got this free beverage and a whole meal in first class. No, it's about how you can use your comforts from this elevation to be of service to other people.
Yeah. That brings me back to something you said earlier, about helping people to share their story before they die. So one thing that you mentioned is that you surrounded yourself with people that were taking that leap. And, that's important because we are the average sum of the 5 people we hang around with most, or the 5 people we listen to the most. we become that average Simon. So if you're constantly around people that are always in drama, always gossiping, then you're likely feeding into that drama and that gossiping and just that overall negativity, versus when you are surrounding yourself with people that are motivated and driven and, you know, trying to reach their goals, then you're naturally going to want to rise to the occasion. And so for you, helping people to share their stories, when you said that, that's so true, because all of us are connected and our stories are for other people. Like the things that we go through, like, yes, we might help ourselves, but really it's to help somebody else that is 10 levels behind us, 15 stages behind us. Because no matter what it is that we're going through, there's always somebody, whether you see them or know them or recognize them or not, somebody that is looking at your life, just wishing they were halfway to the point that you are. And so just helping others to share their stories, because we all are really genuinely connected to one another.
And like my college roommate, she's the first person to really make me wear heels. But it's kind of like this thing that she always lived by, really. She said, we got to stop living our lives basically shopping from the sales rack. We need to choose a point where we actually start shopping from boutiques. It's a completely different experience. And that can mean that you stop buying, I'm trying not to put any brands out there, but you stop buying from the dollar menus somewhere and you choose to make that choice to treat yourself to like a Fogo de Chao or something. It's a different experience. And even in those spaces, you may feel like an imposter, but so do some of the people around you. Like everybody does not have it. The thing is that you're changing your experience.
Yeah. And eventually you rise up to that level to where that becomes your new normal. So I love that. I love that. Now, in the different factors for first class life, if you are unaware of what those key factors are, then make sure you go all the way season 1, episode 1 of the First Class Life podcast, where I explain each of them in a little bit more depth. Or you could just buy the book, First Class Life, 10 Key Factors to Creating a Life Full of Purpose, Fulfillment, and Happiness. Okay. You know where you can find that. And that will explain all of the factors for you. So in the right now moment, though, Miss Shavonne, which factor do you feel that you resonate with the most? Because there's been a few that's popped out to me, what I think that you resonate with the most, but I want to know, what are your thoughts? Which one do you feel you resonate with the most?
I'd love to learn yours, but before, just so I won't be tainted, I'd say thankful. I feel like where I'm at right now is I would just keep seeing full circle moments. Like, you know, no matter what you go through, you can feel like it's the end of the world. You can feel like you'll never get out of the situation. And then you slowly find a new purpose. Because people think purpose is long lasting. No. Purpose is just the next best move, like Oprah would say, the next best step. And so I've had a lot of moments where I was like, why am I going through this? And so I feel like now I'm in a space where, oh, that's why I went through this. So that shows up in how right now I have a creative agency. I still do the publishing. I also have like a women's empowerment platform that's really about kind of like marketing, embedded marketing, so product placements. And I also teach yoga, and that's a whole nother brand. But the things that happen in my life that happen while establishing those brands, like, why am I going through this? And so now it's made sense since I've started my creative agency and have poured all of those experiences, the best of those experiences, into helping others create books, to create new websites, as well as to create like just new visuals. So if you want to reemerge from whatever you're coming through with new images for yourself or new images of products that you want to launch, that's what I do now. But that didn't happen without going through some hard times and now seeing all those things come back full circle. And I'm so grateful. I'm thankful.
Yes. And we're We're so proud of you here. Okay. You said you wanted to know what I thought, and what really just kept popping out to me is the R in first stands for reflective, because we talked a lot about identity and being self-aware and asking, well, why not this? And just, walking that line and doing that dance of self-awareness and where it leads to. So that's what I was really like, oh.
My pastor
And then,
used to say, like, a thinking person is a thankful person. So I could see the connection.
oh, a thinking person is a thankful person. Okay, I like that. That is, unless you overthink. So with that caveat, we don't want y'all overthinking, because that's going to stop you from doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
So yes, and then even another one that I could see popping out was just the A in class of First Class Life stands for action oriented. And I feel like you took a lot of actions in guiding, like you had your self-aware moments where you were reflective, and then you took those moments and you took action to change what you were going through and to create the life that you wanted. And I think that's another key factor in you being where you are today, because you didn't just say, oh, I'm going to sit with this person that I no longer like, but you know what? Even though he said, I want a divorce, I'm going to still show up and take action by going to therapy. I don't really know what's happening right now, but I want to heal. And I'm going to take action by writing my story, which led to you taking action to actually publishing, which led to you taking action to help somebody else share their story. And you took action by going on the China trip whenever you were actually uncomfortable about it. So that is another piece where I feel like your story just embodies, being action oriented and being reflective, aka self-aware.
And I wasn't confident. So you can be action oriented. I'm telling your audience, you can be action oriented, afraid. Because
yes.
And as you mentioned, the confidence came by doing one thing, and that led to another to be action oriented. Yeah.
Yes. Compound actions. There you go. They just build up and build up and build up. And next thing you know, you're doing it. You're doing that thing that you were once so scared and fearful of. So as I mentioned, we've talked a lot about just identity and finding yourself and being self-aware from the things that you're going through to where you want to be and things like that. So I want to ask you, what does it mean to align your rebrand of your identity with your identity that you desire to be or that you're trying to create?
Yeah. So we covered a lot about that, but A.L.I.G.N stands for an actual acronym. And so before you even think about aligning your identity with your brand, you're aligning your brand with your new identity, actually, there's usually like some inciting event. So if you think about, if you have insurance, there's usually a time period where you can register for insurance, like you can have all your kids medically covered, husband, whatever. And so you can only do that during like October, November. The only way you can make a change to your coverage is if something happens. In the other months is if something happens. So you get married or you have another child, you could make changes to your insurance outside of that period of changing your, like, what's allotted. So there's a qualifying life event. So when you think about a rebrand, sometimes there's an event that happens that shifts how your life is going. So maybe you kind of like some of the same things. Maybe you get a new partner. Maybe you decide this doesn't work for me. Maybe you want to just stay relevant, right? And those are different types of rebrands. You can partner up with people, like, for instance, Ivy Park and Adidas. They are two strong brands that came together and created this phenomenal brand. There's also like the refresh. I mentioned Steve Harvey earlier. He went from being only a stand-up comedian to now like a motivational speaker who has his own platform and a TV host and does all these many things. I think he just launched a clothing line and everything. And then you got times where you want to just completely change how you're seen out there, like a complete overhaul. And one of my greatest examples of that is Nicole Kane. She founded Nicole Bitchie, the celebrity blog platform that was very popular, very lucrative, but it wasn't sitting well with her soul. So she pretty much gutted out the whole thing and launched XO Nicole, which is like a women's lifestyle platform. And actually, your girl has an article on there, the Pleasure Principles, right? The Pleasure Principles, some secrets about having a great experience, because, I mean, whatever, that's another thing. But all that to say, those are like 3 of the top ways you can rebrand. Now, aligning is to think about acknowledging your situation. So facing the reality of what is going on in your life. There's some kind of change that has happened where you feel like it doesn't fit who you are anymore, and you maybe want to change your identity through your brand or your business, but you're not quite sure yet. So acknowledge your situation. L is list your aspirations. And I listed that secondly because a lot of times we discount our dreams. So just dream big. Don't worry about the how. Write your list. Steve Harvey talks about writing a list of 300 things, believing God for all 300 things to happen in your life. And he can do exceedingly abundantly above all that you could ever ask or imagine, right? But list your aspirations. Don't judge them. I is inspect your perspective, because most likely there's some doubt that came up. Like, I can't really have that 2022 Honda Civic, because sometimes it's as simple as a basic car, but the newest version. Inspect your perspective. Why don't you think you can have it? Is it because you have credit issues? Okay, let's think about cleaning up your credit. But inspect your perspective, because a lot of times your dreams are within your reach. G is grace. Give yourself grace. So giving yourself grace in 2 ways. Giving yourself grace for who you were, the things you had to do to get to where you are, because sometimes it's a shameful path that leads there. But then also giving yourself grace to not know it all as you start to move towards this new direction. Giving yourself grace to just explore. And this has happened in my life in so many ways. But I'll save it because I know we're towards the end. And then N is with all of that. You acknowledged your situation. You listed your aspirations. You inspected your perspective. You gave yourself grace for the past and future. And now you use all of that knowledge to navigate with clarity. And you can repeat the cycle over and over again, because there's going to be another event, another life qualifying event that makes you want to pivot in a new direction. And so maybe that means, okay, a rebrand I had with Ladies Night, for instance. I acknowledged that how I used to operate in business was not working. It didn't fit who I was, and I needed to take better care of my health. I made a list of things I wanted to do. That's the L. With the business, such as certain experiences I wanted to have with other women, what the brand really represented, because ultimately one thing I had in mind was to create a marketplace for other product-based businesses. So that was part of my list. I inspected my perspective. Okay, because when I transitioned from the Midwest to the West Coast, my housing situation got compromised and I was immediately homeless. And so that's what I was thinking about. Like, I could tell y'all a whole nother story, but I'm not. So, but I inspected my perspective. I was like, well, I don't have stability right now. I don't have the space or the capacity to rebrand. But I inspected that. I was like, okay, I listed out all of the reasons why it wouldn't work. But I gave myself grace, right? That's the G. I gave myself grace for how I got to the point where I was in that moment, while also giving myself grace to not have it figured out right now. I didn't know how I would rebrand. I didn't know what that would mean for the brand, or even if I wanted to keep the brand, right? Because we sometimes face that. I went on a gratitude challenge and started to rebrand by testing different fonts and colors on glassware, because I always knew that the signature product for Ladies Night would be drinkware. So this is 2019. I'm starting this challenge, this personal challenge, just sending out 100 glasses to people that have impacted my life in positive ways. I believe I sent one to you. I can't remember.
I was waiting for the moment, like, I got one.
I was like, I think So I think you got a good one too. Because I knew Ladies Night was pink, but I'm trying all these different shades of pink on these cups because I'm like ordering them 12 at a time, and the pink is looking brown, the pink is looking fuchsia. Like I just kept going through, but I was like, I'm gonna send one to everybody I'm thankful for. They don't even have to buy the product. I don't care. I just want them to know I'm thankful for them. So, and that was the experience I wanted to cultivate. 2020, I'm still sending these cups, right? Because I hadn't made it to my 100. Guess what happens? A pandemic. Folks are isolated. Folks feel unconnected, but they're getting these glasses in the mail. Someone is thinking about them. That was the best feeling in the world because it felt like a dream delayed, but it was right on time for when it was supposed to be executed, right? So I acknowledged I was homeless, was rebuilding myself. I listed my aspirations for rebranding my business. I expected my doubts like, who am I to, right? I gave myself grace and started to move with gratitude. And that was the end. I navigated with clarity. I was just grateful to have a place to lay my head. I ended up in a shelter, and I have moved and I'm in my own space now. But I navigated that season with that clarity. And as a result, I finally, by the 112th cup, got my colors together, got the final logo to a great place. And so that is what it meant to align a rebrand with how I saw myself. Because especially in business, we say it's not personal. It is. Like, if I'm a mother of 10 children, I'm not going to move in business the same way that someone who's single is, right? I don't have any children. And so I have the flexibility to move around, but I also have health issues. If I overstress, it's going to slow me down for some months. I've learned that the hard way. And so when I think about those types of rebrands, so going back to the partnerships, the refresh, and the overhaul, for me, it meant partnering. I partner with women all the time. I have photo shoots all the time where I'm featuring products from other people. See, I buy their products. And determine from there. So I'm putting money in their pocket. They don't know that their product might be in one of my upcoming photo shoots, but it's been about partnering with people for me and my own rebrand. And that's part of a creative agency model too. So yeah, partnership.
I just love that. And it, like, I hear a resounding collaboration over competition whenever you speak those words. That's like just ringing in my ear because we can go so much further, faster together than trying to chuck it out on our own. So I love that you brought that up. And all that you just said, blah, blah, blah.
Sorry.
And all that you just said, because you shed out those layers and you let us into the vulnerable truth. So there, it fits. And all that you just said, how can the folks, like, if they want to go deeper into aligning their identity, what is to come for you? How can they reach out to you as far as, just getting that guidance and assistance if someone else is struggling with just identifying who they are and what they should do next?
Thank you. So the A.L.I.G.N method is something I teach as a free workshop right now. And so it is that process of transformation and asking certain questions I've identified to help you through the A.L.I.G.N framework. So if you want to have that, feel free to email me. I could do like corporate workshops, girl group workshops, whatever. I love Ladies Night. Of course, that's one of the brands, right? I just love the transformations, the learning to accept yourselfness of it all. And so for right now, that would be probably the best way to learn more about alignment. But what that means for you creatively, right? So sometimes you get to that place where you see yourself differently and you're navigating towards something different. You want to usually like come out of any kind of transformation with something new, looking new, smelling new, being new, right? And for me, that means maybe you're launching a book. It means maybe you're launching a web page like a Shopify if you want to launch some new products. a blog or whatever, or if you want to come out with some new images, like a whole new attitude, as Lindsey mentioned earlier, as far as my photo shoot with the glam, the old school glam, like that was like a reemergence of sorts. And so I can coordinate that for you through VKS Collective. So feel free to check out the website, vkscollective.com. But the workshop right now is just free, just a free experience. But then if you want to rebrand with a launch, that's where we can partner up for service.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we will have all of that info in the show notes. So make sure you go back and look at the description and everything. So that way you can see VKScollective.com. And make sure you mention First Class Life in the comments of your discovery call to save 20% on your service. Ow. Yeah, so VKScollective.com. Now, I know you just shared that, but where can people reach you? How do they contact you? How do they follow you so they can get them some more Shavonne?
So for the business side, everything is VKS Collective. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's all VKS Collective. I've learned from the rebranding process to keep everything the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then for personal, if you just want to just see how I'm living, see how I'm like taking on these recent TikTok challenges, you can check out REYNA_SANCE. It's a play on Renaissance woman. So Reina, Queen, _Stomp. And that's, I'm most active on Instagram.
So y'all make sure y'all follow her, and then hopefully you'll be able to find those pictures I talked about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's gonna be at vkpresses.com. So yeah, check out all the yeah.
There you go. You're welcome. Flatter your eyes. Treat your eyes to that beauty. Okay. So I want to thank you for just hanging out with us here in the First Class Life Studios. You have been amazing. Dropped a lot of gems just talking about identity and aligning yourself with your identity. So thank you. And for all of my listeners and viewers at home, make sure you share this episode out. And if you want to get some bonus footage where our lovely Shavonne is sharing a few extra gems, make sure that you are a member of our Patreon community, okay? Because that's where you can hear some extra tips on your identity and things like that. So make sure you join the community, get in that discussion, and share us out, leave us comments, all of that good stuff. We love when you are interactive with us as much as possible. Follow us on Instagram at First Class Life Podcast, and do all the things in these internet streets. Okay.
Thank you so much.
So
and y'all find
absolutely.
Sign up for the Patreon.
Yes. Thank you for being a guest. Thank you. And with that, I pray that everyone has a blessed and abundant day. And remember, it is up to you to create your first class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. Bye.
Bye.
Looking for amazing products to help boost your first class lifestyle? Then head over to firstclasslifeshop.com, where you can treat yourself to personal development books and workbooks, lifestyle affirmation cards, adult coloring books, mugs, notebooks, hoodies, t-shirts, leggings, and more. All products were designed to help you master your mindset, walk in your purpose, and live your first class life, because you deserve it. So treat yourself today at firstclasslifeshop.com. Again, that's firstclasslifeshop.com. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. But please be sure to subscribe to the First Class Life Show. And don't forget to rate, leave a review, and join our private community so that we can continue to provide you with great personal development conversations to help you maximize your impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. You deserve it.